it's Ty and welcome back to my channel. So today I will be doing my top books of 2022 and we did it, guys. We are finally here. This is my last end of the year video you guys will be getting from me this year. So if you missed it, I have already posted all of the books I've DNF'd this year, my most disappointing / worst books of this year, and my most surprising books of this year. So I'll have all of those videos linked down below in case you guys are interested. But this will be my top books of this year, and I only have 4. I thought about it long and hard. I have wrecked my brain. I have tried to figure out what other books can I put into this list besides the 4 that I have, and I only have 4, and I have settled on that. I'm okay with that. These were the 4 books that after I read them, I just could not get them off of my mind. I could go back and read these at any point in time, and these books I was so excited about. So these are the only 4 books that I'm going to talk about today. So we will go ahead and get started. So first up on my top books of this year, we have Mickey 7 by Edward Ashton, and this is an adult science fiction novel. This one I'm going to have to credit to Tori Morrow, and I will have her channel linked down below, but she is the one that actually inspired me to pick this one up, and she did not like this book. But I picked this one up because when she described this book, it sounded like something that I would enjoy, and indeed I did. So in this one, we are following our main character by the name of Mickey, and he is what you would call an expendable. And him and a whole bunch of other people are living on this planet, and his job is to take on these really horrific assignments that could possibly get him killed that nobody else would want to take on. But lucky for him, or I don't know, unlucky for him, if he dies, they would basically just make another version of himself and bring him back. So at the beginning of this story, he is on iteration number 7 of himself, hence the name Mickey 7. At the beginning of this story, he's on version number 7. So we have Mickey 7, and him and 2 of his friends are working on this mission, and his buddy believes that Mickey 7 is dead, so he leaves him. But Mickey 7 is not dead. And when he gets back to his room, he is met with Mickey 8. Now, one of the rules for Mickey is that there cannot be 2 iterations of him at the same time. So now that we have Mickey 7 and Mickey 8, they kind of have to hide each other. So whenever one of them is out and about, the other one has to stay hidden. So that is the basic premise of this story. They are trying to hide that there are 2 versions of Mickey, and then we also kind of have like this underlying plot of something is taking place on this planet that shouldn't be, and they're also trying to figure that out as well. But I loved this story. I loved Mickey 7. I loved the banter back and forth between Mickey 7 and Mickey 8. I love the humor in this. I ate this story up. It's short, so it was really quick. I think I read it in about a day or 2. I just had a really fun time with this story. I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be just a duology. I know we're getting book 2 next year, which that is one of my most anticipated releases of this year. I might even reread this one, and I don't say that a lot, but I might even reread this one in anticipation for that next book. But I really enjoyed this story. I loved getting Mickey's background and how he even decided to sign up to be an expendable, because who in the world would want to do that? But I just loved getting this. I loved learning about why they are even on this planet and what the purpose of them doing this is, what happened to everybody else in the world. Like, I just loved this story. Now, even though this is in my top books of this year, I did not rate this a 5 stars. This only got a 4 stars for me because this had a lot of science in it. It is a science fiction. Some of that went over my head. Some of it I could understand. A lot of it I could not. The stuff that I could not understand, I might have dozed off a little bit. And because of that, I just could not consciously give this a 5 stars. And then there was one part of this book that I was not here for. And there was like this weird sex scene between both of the Mickeys and one of the Mickey's girlfriends that I thought was just odd and not needed. And so I didn't really like that, but it was quick. It wasn't, I hate to say it was quick, but it was quick. And it didn't need to be there. And so because of that, I just gave it a 4 stars. This book was not perfect, but taking all of that out of this, I loved everything else about it. I also don't necessarily think that this needs like a second book, but I'll take it. If it's giving me more of Mickey, I'll take it. I'll read more of Mickey. But I definitely loved this story. I would recommend this one. If that sounded like a fun time to you, I would pick this one up, but I loved Mickey 7. So next up we have The Hacienda by Isabel Cienes, and this is a adult horror novel, and this was one of my most anticipated reads for this year, and it did not disappoint because I absolutely loved the story. So in this, we are following our main character by the name of Beatrice. This is set after the Mexican War of Independence, and at the beginning of this story, Beatrice is married off to Rodolfo, and she is going off with him because her father was actually executed in the war, and that left her and her mother without a lot of money. So Beatrice is trying to like marry into a family that has money, and so when she goes off to Rodolfo, she is hoping that this will kind of set her and her mother up for a better future. And so when she goes off with him, she goes to stay with him at this hacienda, and she kind of realizes that this might not have been the best idea because he is sent off for work and she is left to stay at this hacienda by herself, along with some of like the servants and his sister Juana, who does not even stay in the hacienda. She stays off at like the guest house that's still on the property, but not actually in the hacienda. And so she notices that this is a little creepy, and she starts to feel a little unsettled in the house. She starts to feel like she's being watched. Some strange things happen. And so we are just following her as she is trying to figure out what exactly is going on in this place. Once she starts to notice that like some weird things is happening there, she gets some help from the local priest by the name of Andreas, and he comes to help. And so the story kind of takes off from there. I loved the story. I thought it was super, super creepy. I loved just like the slow build to the creepiness. And then once we got the creepiness, I loved just how creepy and like the horror aspects of this. I loved the story of behind why everything was happening. I did listen to this on audio, which I think added to the creep factor of this story. I honestly loved everything about this. Now, this is compared to the story Rebecca, which I'm familiar with that story, but I've never read that story, so I myself cannot compare it to it. A lot of people who have read Rebecca do not seem to enjoy this one. Now, because I cannot make that comparison myself, I really enjoyed this one. This book is also compared to Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which I have read Mexican Gothic. I have enjoyed Mexican Gothic, but I honestly enjoyed this one more than Mexican Gothic. Both of those stories deal with a haunted house, but I just enjoyed this one more so than that one. If you enjoyed Mexican Gothic, I would say give this one a try. If you enjoy Rebecca, I would still give this one a try. I would just say I'm not sure if you would like it, but I still really enjoyed the story overall. I liked the haunted house feel. I liked the creepiness feel of this one. I liked the reasoning behind why everything was happening. I liked our two characters in this one. There's always, I feel, a romance budding in the background of these stories. Whereas I didn't care for the romance that happened in Mexican Gothic. I was fine with it in this one. So I just loved everything about this story. So The Hacienda definitely made it in my top. Next up, we have Jade Legacy, which is the final book in the Greenbone saga. This is a adult fantasy. And I mean, if you've been on my channel, you know that I was finishing up the series this year. I absolutely love this one. I have a full series review for the Greenbone saga, so I'm not gonna go into a full review over what that is, just because I'll have that linked if you guys want to check that one out. So I just really enjoyed this one. I'm not going to say that the Green Bone Saga is a perfect series, because it's not. It definitely has its flaws, but I loved the ending of the series. I loved how Fonda Lee was able to wrap everything up. This one just had me on the edge of my seat for 2 reasons. So I read this one way after I feel like a majority of a lot of people read this one. So I was constantly waiting for something to happen based off of people's reactions. So that was one reason. And then the second reason is because a lot of stuff did happen in this story, and a lot of it just ripped my heart out when stuff happened. One of my favorite things about this one, which is also one of the things that I kind of did not like about this series, is that the series did a lot of time jumps. So we go through decades, I feel, in this series. And because so much time passes, we actually got to see the kids grow up from our main characters. So when the main characters had their children, we got to see them grow up. And that was one of my favorite parts about this one, is seeing them grow up. But that was also kind of devastating because some things happened that broke my heart. But I liked that part of the story, is seeing what happened to the children. That if you know, you know. But I loved this story. I, at some point, plan to reread the Green Bone Saga back to back to back to get the whole story, because I read it within probably like a 3 or 4 month period, but I definitely want to read them closer together. But this one, I just loved how everything wrapped up. This was the conclusion that I feel I needed, and I hate that it's over. I love these characters. I wish that they could stick around some more, but I'm happy that I read this series. And if you have not picked this series up yet, I suggest that you do. Again, I will have my series review over the Green Bone Saga linked so that you guys can watch that if you are interested, because I don't want to waste your time here to just talk about the same thing that I've already talked about. But again, I just really enjoyed this one, and this is definitely one of those books that after I read it, it just stayed on my mind with some of these things that happened in this one and in the series overall. I just would highly recommend this series overall. Then the last book and the top book of the year for me is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. And I only talked about this book once on my channel. It is an adult fantasy book, but I freaking loved this story. This is also not a perfect story by any means, but I loved it nonetheless. So this one follows a really powerful and strong fighting family by the name of the Matsudas, and they live in the Kaigenese Empire. And we're primarily following this 14-year-old boy by the name of Mamoru. And at his school, this new kid on the block comes in, basically this outsider that doesn't live within like their empire, and he basically shakes up Mamoru's world and kind of tells him that everything that he thought that he knew is not true. And Mamoru doesn't know how to handle this information because he's kind of taught that whatever I tell you is fact. And so he goes home and starts to ask his mother, Misaki, all of these questions, and his mother is like, I don't know how to like answer this. I'm not really sure, because she kind of knows that what this new kid is telling you might be true, but I don't know how to like break that to you. And so we then find out that Misaki, his mother, is this woman who is, a mother, this housewife. That's what she is told to be. But we find out throughout this story that she is this badass fighter. And so throughout this story, within their empire, there is this looming war that is coming down upon them. We are watching as this war is approaching, and they are gearing up for battle. They might have to fight, and Misaki might have to start putting her skills to use. And so I thought this was an amazing story. We are learning a lot about this family. We're learning a lot about Misaki, the mother, and living in Kaigen and battling having to be submissive and hiding these powers that she at one point was taught to have, but now she's not allowed to show them. We are learning a lot about Mamoru, this 14-year-old boy who is very strong, but now he is having to put his skills to use at a time when he might not feel he is quite ready. We are learning about his father, who is this really cold-hearted bastard who you just do not like, but you learn throughout the story why he is the way that he is, and then you start to learn why this war is coming down upon them. This is just a freaking fantastic story. I loved this story. I buddy read this with one of my friends. We cannot put this down. This was definitely a conversation piece. We had so much to say about this. This is one of those stories that you could like pick it apart and just talk about it for hours. One of the funny things that me and him, he actually pointed this out to me, and I'm not sure anybody who has read this, is when we were first reading this, he noticed that the first day of this story is a really long day. We were reading this in about, I don't know, still like over 150 pages. He was like, we're still on day one. This is a really long day. I was like, are we still on day one? I was like, oh man, I hope we're not about to have pacing issues with this book. But it was a really long day. Day one of this story was a long day. They went through it on day one. So I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but day one of the story was a long ass day. It was just something that was so funny. But besides that, this was a fantastic story. If you are someone that loves fantasy, or I would even say this is a good story for people who are just starting to pick up fantasy. It's not that hard to get into. The magic is not that hard to understand or get into. This is a really good story. So I would highly recommend. I cannot wait to pick up something else by M.L. Wang. I believe she has another book that's coming out in sometime next year that I cannot wait to get my hands on. So yes, I would highly recommend The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wang. So those are my top 4 books of 2022, and I'll have my other end of the year videos linked, as well as my series review for the Greenbone Saga linked if you guys are interested. And I will see you guys next time. Bye!